As I've been losing more and more precious space in my home arcade, I've started to invest more into some of the smaller form factor arcade machines that you can get, like the bar top units. And I've gotten multiple ones from Arcade 1-Up. I also purchased the Unico Visco bar top machine. And one in particular that I'd been humming and hawing over purchasing was the Evercade Alpha. But recently, one of their versions of the Evercade Alpha, the Taito one in particular, actually went on sale for around $240 Canadian. And I decided, you know what, this is my sign to finally pull the trigger, as it's pretty much $100 cheaper than it's pretty much ever been. And so I pulled the trigger. I picked this up a couple days ago, and I've been testing it out and playing through a couple different games on it. And I gotta say that there's some really awesome things that this unit does, but it's also lacking in some other ways. And in this video, I'm gonna go over whether it's worth picking one of these up or if it's just worth skipping entirely. So let's take a look. So to start, the packaging itself looks, actually I thought, very nice, and unpackaging everything, I felt like this was a premium product. I actually really liked the way that Evercade even packaged their additional marquees, and I'll kind of get into that in a moment here. I also like that they even gave universal power adapters, despite the fact that I'm in North America, so I probably won't use any of these, but it's just a cool little touch or addition for the way they're probably going to market with these devices. Now, pulling the machine out itself, very similarly packaged to other bar top machines that I've had, where there's foam inserts basically holding everything together and essentially keeping it from rocking around or getting damaged. Now, pulling it out of the box, one of the things that I always look at with these bar tops, I'm always curious about the different size and form factors. I actually like the design of this unit. I like the way it's actually shaped and everything else. I also like the layout that it has for its button placement, as well as the little coin slot that it has on the front, and even the buttons for like the menu and start and everything else. But getting kind of deeper into this unpackaging, one of the things I did notice, and I heard that this was a issue with some of these Evercade Alpha devices, is that I had a bit of almost looks like a gash in the molding on the side, and there seems to also be a bit of a scratch on the actual control deck. Minor things, not enough for me to be reaching out to customer support and returning this, but a couple little minor things that weren't great. I wasn't excited about it, but they were there, and they are noticeable. However, as far as the build quality of this goes itself, it feels kind of light, I guess, but overall, like where I have it set up, it's pretty planted, so it's not like that's really a major issue, but overall it feels like it's well made, well built, and the actual material that they've used and the actual overlays that they've used for the skin on this, I think look great and feel great. And as it stands, I intend that this is going to look good for the long term. I'm not gonna have weird stuff peeling off or breaking down. Now, getting it set up was pretty straightforward. It actually asked me to log into my Wi-Fi, which I did, and then it immediately updated. I'm not actually sure, I didn't research this part of the device before purchasing it. I'm not sure what sort of space or storage capabilities it has, but it downloaded like a 700 megabyte or so update, and then basically just it started up. Now, one of the things I want to highlight is the main games that I've actually played on this growing up were Bubble Bobble, as well as Puzzle Bobble, which I played a ton of growing up. So those are like kind of the two games I was looking forward to. Space Invaders is also on here, which I've played quite a bit of before, but I'm not going to say I have the same level of fondness as I do for the title game or the marquee game that's on this. I did check out some of the other titles as well. Growl actually seems like a pretty cool beat 'em up. I'd never ever played it before having this machine. There's also another, it's like an action RPG style arcade game, which I thought was quite unique, and I've been actually playing a bit of here. It's called Kadash, which seems pretty cool so far, and it's different in that era of game as far as I'm concerned, so I've been getting into that. There's a couple others on here like Elevator Action, which I did play. I didn't really care for it growing up, and still not ultra interested in it now. I'll highlight this. So there's different Evercade models, and I'll be fully transparent that The Mega Man one to me kind of actually seemed a bit more appealing, but the price point for this, in my opinion, made a lot more sense because I wasn't going to go and spend, I think it was like $350 plus tax Canadian to get the Mega Man version over this when this was going for $240 Canadian plus tax, which to me was a steal for a device like this. But I will say, like, I think some of those game selections are probably a bit more appealing. But as I see it, you're able to actually add more games through the cartridge system from Evercade, which is actually a little bit new to me. I've never owned an Evercade device before this, but I love the concept. I love the idea that you can add more games through your cartridge, and you can actually download them as well, as I understand, to the machine through the Evercade marketplace. However, my understanding is it's not all integrated into the device. I didn't really play with that much. I've been testing a lot of the games and how they function, but there's a way to do that and add them into this system, which I thought was pretty interesting. Now, one thing that I really like about this is the interface is very smooth. And a lot of the games have all their own different settings, aspect ratio settings. They also have save state options, which I thought was actually a great feature for this device. It made it feel really fully fledged in a lot of ways, which I thought was awesome. Another thing I want to highlight is I've been going through a bunch of the different games here, and I always check this out because I'm always worried that I'm going to get a machine where these games just don't run. I did test every single game on this unit, and the emulation seems stellar. I haven't had any weird hiccups or inconsistencies or problems. And I did even play with a couple of the different settings in the selection to see if that might change anything. I personally like the crispness of like a high definition display, pulling kind of retro games forward that way. I know some people play with straight scan lines and all those sorts of things. Not necessarily my deal, but I did try messing around with those to see if those might affect anything. It didn't. So as it stands, the emulation across the board feels pretty good. Now, a couple things I do want to get into though. And this comes down to something that I think has some good positives, but things that can be improved upon. And look, I know I might catch flack for this because I own a bunch of arcade one-up machines, and I have some machines that this isn't the best thing ever, but I really like the joystick on this unit. The buttons, something about them, it feels like they should press in just a bit more. I personally am not a huge fan of that. I still maintain that I know this machine didn't get a ton of love when it came out and still has not gotten a ton of love. I really like the buttons on the Unico Visco machine that I have. I even actually, in my opinion, prefer some of my stock arcade one-up buttons over these buttons. Now, I didn't purchase this machine as a button masher. Yes, there's a couple brawlers and beat 'em ups, and maybe my opinion might drastically change if I bought the Street Fighter version, and I would wager it has the exact same control deck. But the buttons feel like they should just indent just a little bit more, or even just have a bit more of a tactile sensation. Again, not terrible. They don't feel awful, and they're not game breaking. Just something I thought that was worth mentioning. And kind of further into kind of the hardware of this machine, the screen itself I thought looked crisp, very good. Even from different angles, I actually adjusted it from a different spot in my room because I kind of preferred the area I put it in now, which you can see kind of I'm standing over it at this point, so I'm kind of looking down on it, but there's nothing weird going on with the screen that way, and I think it works perfectly fine. The sound as well, for, again, my opinion is like retro games don't need to have, you know, this Dolby Atmos level receiver and speaker system to play these types of games and hear these types of games, but I thought the sound was actually quite good. And I really like the dual speaker setup. They're integrated on the sides of the unit. Maybe it's just where I have it positioned, but I thought they actually sounded pretty good. And getting kind of further into it though, the marquee itself, I think, looks awesome. And I didn't realize this. I'd actually watched Evercade Alpha reviews when this machine came out. I didn't realize that you could actually swap out your marquees with different marquees. So I was actually very grateful that Evercade sent multiple different inserts that you can swap out. If you want to change a look, you want to have Space Invaders on there or something, or Bubble on there. I thought it was a nice touch, especially for people like me who, I like playing it's just a weird retro thing for me, but I like playing, like on my Super Pac-Man, playing Super Pac-Man on that, or on my Pac-Mania, playing Pac-Mania on that, watching all the branding kind of match that game. I know it might be a minor thing, but for nerds like me, that's something that I think is cool. So I thought it was cool that they gave a handful of marquees that you could swap out for this device to kind of just change it up. Now, I know some of you guys are going to probably say, well, it looks a little washed out. Maybe it could be brighter, and you're probably right. But as I said in the past, marquees to me, if they even light up, I think it's cool. I'm not a major diehard who's going to go gut the thing and change out the lighting system for that. I think it's perfectly acceptable for what it does. Now, one of the things that I kind of want to mention about this, because I think this machine, to be transparent, does a lot of really good things. I think it plays well, despite a couple annoyances, I guess is the best way to put it on the control panel. It feels well. The game selection on this is pretty good, and I like that you can upgrade the game selection. But on the other side, where this is short of being, I guess, a slam dunk, is a couple things. So you do have two USB ports on the front, so you can connect USB-based controllers. I did mess with it on a couple of my USB-based controllers that I have lying around this room, and it seems to work pretty effectively, pretty well. But this device to me, based off of the Evercade ecosystem and what Evercade's created, it seems to me like this device should be almost like a multi-purpose device. Now, this is gonna sound weird because if you watch some of my other reviews on different devices, I mentioned how, my Unico Visco has HDMI out, but I don't necessarily care because the device just has, a couple stock games and that's it. This device lacks an HDMI port entirely. And the reason that I dislike that is I like the idea of purchasing more of these cartridges. I actually even saw that there's, Banjo-Kazooie that's coming out for this device. I see that there's already Duke Nukem, for example, that's already on this device. And I guess where my mind goes is this. I'm not necessarily going to play with the control panel on a game like Duke Nukem or Banjo-Kazooie. I'd probably play that sitting down with a controller. But what would be even cooler is if I had this with an HDMI port plugged into something else and almost use this as a console when it came to games like that. And then when it comes to the arcade games that I like, play it that way on this device, especially with the way the cartridge slots are set up. It almost feels like this was designed or intended to be almost like a console / arcade machine in a bit of a unique way that way. So the fact that this doesn't have HDMI out to me seems a little bizarre. Secondary to that, I'm aware that, or at least to my understanding, Evercade does have some games that interface online. I believe, this is just me looking through Reddit, so Redditors, you might have lied to me. But my understanding is that some games do have like leaderboard support. None of the games that I've played on here, from what I can tell, have any level of leaderboard support. It would be cool to see, and this device can be updated clearly, so it'd be cool to see in the future if Evercade provided some sort of online support for some of these games. It'd even be awesome to play some of these two-player based games, multiplayer on these devices. That's been a massive criticism I've had of multiple different one-up devices like their countercades and even their partycades. And I always thought it would be great to have a bar top that has those features. The Evercade clearly has the capabilities. Not sure if that's something down the pipeline with them or not, but it is something that I thought would be awesome in terms of replayability to kind of keep me coming back to this machine. That mixed with an HDMI port where I could actually use this as a proper home console, to me, would be a slam dunk. Now, with that being said, for those of you who followed many of my different reviews, I bought this device on sale. So at the $240 price point, I think this thing was well worth the money, and I'm intending on picking up some of the cartridges for this as well and trying some other games on this device and kind of getting more invested into the Evercade ecosystem. However, again, I'm going to put that out there that for me, some of those deficits like this not having HDMI out probably going to prevent me from fully getting deeper and deeper into that Evercade ecosystem because I can't really experience some of the other things that I would love to play through this device on a bigger screen. Now, I know for some of you, you might not care, and that's perfectly acceptable, but for someone like me who has 1,000 different devices I can play on, I like the idea of having something that's dedicated. I like supporting the developers and those sorts of things where I can play those types of games on a bigger screen and really experience them in a different way, and then hop back to this machine for its arcade-based games that I'd like to. But I know maybe I'm beating a dead horse at this point, but for the $240 that I got this for, I think this machine's great. And I think there's some great games on it. And I love the idea of being able to add more and kind of really get deeper and deeper into this device.